A very good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of this podcast series that we call Physical Health Matters. This is a special initiative by the LinkedIn community called Physical Therapists in the US. And the idea of this podcast series is that we want to give a platform, we want to give a voice to the physical therapists across the US. Uh, Physical therapy, in many ways, is a very thankless profession. We have lots of physical therapists across the length and breadth of US who have been working day and night, working to make their patients happy. But not a lot of them get their voices covered. Not a lot of them get their voices heard. So through this platform, the idea is that we want to speak to physical therapists in the US, understand their life, understand the challenges that they are facing, understand how important or how seamless the technology in their life is, understand how do they see physical therapy growing from here. As for myself, my name is Arunabh, and I am part of Remesis. Remesis is a technology-led company. We are a health tech company, and we build software solutions to make the lives of physical therapists and their patients easier. The idea is that we want to move away from the typical bot-led conversation that is currently happening across various softwares between physical therapists and their patients. We want to humanize this. We want it to be more interactive. We want it to be more intuitive. And we want the patients to feel cared for. This and much more. That is what we are building in Remesis, and I'm going to touch upon them as we move forward in the podcast. But let me shift the limelight today to the hero of the day, to the champion of the day, Dr. Geeta Katira. Dr. Geeta is a seasoned physical therapist in the US who has been practicing for more than 15 years across multiple organizations. And I would like Dr. Geeta to talk a little bit about herself. Where is she currently working? What all organizations has she worked for before we delve further into the podcast? So over to you, Dr. Geeta.
Hi, Arunabh. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I am working presently at Regency Albany. It is a skilled nursing facility. It's a group of facilities, of which I'm overseeing two. I am working with Aegis Therapies. This is going on 5 years. I have also worked with a company called Rehab Care. I have worked with Flagship, and I have worked with Heartland Manor Care. Three of them are very big. Flagship is a little more local comparatively speaking, but it's big nonetheless. And yeah, so here I am. I've worked in outpatient, I've worked in school systems, I've done a little bit of home health, and I've done quite a bit of skilled nursing facilities. And in addition to that, I also have some experience working in Canada. I also worked for the Health Authority in Canada. So
Wonderful. So I think most of the podcast today will feature about your professional journey, the organizations that you have worked, the kind of challenges that you have faced, how did you overcome them, and very importantly, what do you like, what do you not like about the way physical therapy is being done right now. But before we get into the professional life, very quickly, I wanted to understand. So are you originally from the US?
no, I was born and brought up in India. I am from Mumbai, and I did my undergrad from Manipal. And then I came to the US for my master's. I was in Michigan, and I got my licensure in Michigan. I started working in outpatient clinics, and then I moved to Washington, D.C. to be closer to family. And that's when I started my journey in the skilled nursing homes. And I've been in the D.C. metro area for the longest. And then I just moved to Oregon earlier this year. So,
Okay. So while we are recording this podcast right now, we would also be disseminating it through a lot of social media handles and through a lot of other channels to potential physical therapy aspirants across the world. And obviously, there are a lot of physical therapy aspirants in India who would be getting inspired by your story. So one technical question for you is that, so say somebody is doing a physical therapy course in India, and then they move to the US. Do they have to do any additional courses to become a licensed physical therapist in the US? Or do the
yes,
Indian degree suffice?
no, they do. It varies from state to state. and university to university that you come from. A lot of universities are now channeling their programming in a way that it is equivalent to the United States level. So my college, for instance, has a lot of alumni that are all over the world. So they have a lot of experience in that. So we did cover some coursework, which is not typically a part of the curriculum, but because they knew that their students are having to take this extra coursework when they go forward. So they inculcated that in our curriculum, and some universities have taken lead with that, some have not. So there is different ways to come up with those courses. They are called practices. So you could either do something through CLEP. It's an organization where you could challenge the exam, you self-study, you prepare, and then you challenge the exam. Or you could go through community colleges, or you could also do it through your university when you come here for your master's. So it depends on the state, because the requirement varies from state to state.
Okay. I think this should be very helpful for physical therapy aspirants, especially from India, who want to move to the States. Now, one question, and this is something that I love asking every PT that I meet, is what inspired you to take up physical therapy?
So one of my relatives had an above knee amputation when I was in grade 12. I didn't much know about physical therapy at the time, but because it was my school break, I didn't have anything else to do. So I was, always present and watching what was happening with her therapy. And I was amazed at how they brought her back to standing, walking, and practically doing everything with her prosthetic limb. So I was just taken in, and I thought that this is what I would love to do, to add more quality of life to people around me. So I thought I found my calling, and that's why I joined the program.
Very interesting. So, in fact, my father, who is a patient of advanced Parkinson's, and I would give a lot of credit to his physical therapist. I live in Delhi, and the physical therapist also lives very close to our place. And he visits us, I think, thrice or four times every week. And despite having this Parkinson's disease for close to 10 years now, he's still able to walk. And I would give a lot of credit for that to the physical therapist. While he's very good at what he does, but I also love how passionate he's about making sure that my father is going for his walks. He's taking him around for this walk. So consider this as a heartfelt note of thanks from my side for the amazing work that physical therapists across the globe are doing.
Yes, when I was in college, one of our professors said something which has stuck with me, that medicine can add years to your life, but it's therapy that adds quality to that life. So I take a lot of pride in what I do. It may not always happen outside in the real world where people acknowledge what you bring to the table. Sometimes people are not aware. Sometimes they are blissfully ignorant or by choice. So it's very nice to hear that you can see the difference that the therapist is making in your father's life, and I'm so happy that you found the right match, so your father can have a better chance at keeping active and fulfilling what he would like to fulfill.
So I actually like the phrase that you use, the right match, because I also believe that you have to find the right match. We experimented with multiple physical therapists before we finalized on this particular guy. And I'll touch upon that later during our discussion. So talking about your current profession. So from what I understand, you're currently working with Aegis and you're a director of rehabilitation services. So what does your typical day look like?
So I do a lot of patient care. We are short staffed. That is one of the biggest challenges across the board, all over the country. I'm pretty sure all over North America, actually. So I do a lot of patient care. I do scheduling. I do attend meetings. We do have something called care conferences, where we update the family members if they are available and wanting to know what their loved one is up to and what the discharge plan looks like, because they may not necessarily be able to live on their own, or they may. So it's just basically bringing them up to speed and kind of discussing as a team and catering to their needs and problem solving as a team. So that's pretty much what my day looks like, in addition to a few administrative tasks, but that's mostly what I do.
Interesting. So obviously when you came to the US 15 years back, or when you started your physical therapy journey as a licensed physical therapist almost 15 years back, you would be part of a much larger team, and now you have moved to managing a very large team. So what do you miss? So obviously there are certain perks and certain benefits that come associated with being a just a team member and having someone who can mentor you, guide you, versus having a big team that you need to mentor, you need to guide, you need to be after their lives to make sure things are getting done. So what do you miss as a team leader that you had as a team member you don't have as a team leader?
What I loved as a team member was the comfort and the ease being around everybody else, being one of them. As much as I try, even as a team lead, there's sometimes I feel a unsaid boundary, or also sometimes it's pressing on my time because I have 10 extra things to do. Agreed that my staff has to do a lot of patient care, a lot more than I do, but I also have to make sure that everything is in place for them to succeed. So sometimes it's a little bit heavy on like what needs to be done in the time that has been given to me, but I also acknowledge that they also have similar challenges. So it's very hard sometimes to find the right balance to be a team member as well as a team lead.
Yeah, so this reminds me of what the famous Spider-Man dialogue, which says that with great power come great responsibilities. So I think
Yes.
the load of responsibilities might be getting a bit too much. So very quickly, tracing your journey. So where did you start your career in physical therapy? Which organization did you work for?
Heartland Manor Care, that was in Michigan. It was an outpatient clinic, and I was blessed to get a super area vice president who literally handheld me and walked me through becoming the professional that I became. And I also was lucky that I had two other therapists, senior therapists, working with me that I could bounce off ideas with. I could watch and learn like on the job. So it doesn't get better than that, because you get to see live how to conduct yourself in a workplace, what you can do, and how to basically everything, interaction with patients, discharge planning, everything. So I was very lucky that I got that opportunity. And from there, I went on to the school systems. And again, I got to work with some really seasoned people. So I feel like I've been blessed.
Interesting. So 15 years back at Heartland and today at Aegis, how has technology changed? And this is something that is very close to our heart because we are building technology solutions, we are building software solutions with a very clear mission that we want to make the lives of patients and physical therapists easier by reducing the paperwork, by reducing the documentation, but still retaining a very strong human touch so that the patients do not feel that they're talking to a bot. So 15 years back, if I take you 15 years back, what was the extent of technology integration in your profession versus what is it today?
Because I started out in outpatient, it was a lot more hands-on. It was not as extensive documentation as it is now. Probably even in outpatient, I haven't been in an outpatient clinic in a long time now. But back then, it was not, from what I hear from friends and peers, it was not as extensive as it is at this point in time. And reimbursement patterns have changed, expectations have changed. So there's a lot more that goes into note writing. I almost feel like, along with your therapy coursework, there really should be a creative writing, a general course about reporting. There's a lot more, I think, that is expected out of a therapist now than it was back when I started.
And this is something that we have been very commonly hearing. So we would have spoken to close to, I would say, 500 physical therapists across the states over the last 8-9 months. And we see that this is a very common complaint. A lot of people are struggling that despite the fact that technology is improving and the fact that there's a lot of technology integration that is happening in the field of physical therapy right now as compared to what it was, say, a decade back. But the amount of time that a physical therapist ends up spending on documenting what he's doing because of the legal requirement, and maybe because a lot of these technology platforms are very archaic. So
Yeah.
without naming them, I've seen these technology platforms, seen some of the most popular technology platforms. And frankly speaking, uh, PT technology in the US has not been able to catch up with the amount of technology advancements that have happened in some other health tech field in the States. So do you also face this? So do you end up spending a lot of time on documenting instead of actually interacting with the patients?
We do spend a lot more time now. I won't say it's more than what we spend with the patients, but it is definitely a lot more, because there's also another thing that is probably every therapist's nightmare is utilization review. And a lot of them are not necessarily therapists who are reviewing your documents. So what I was taught is you have to write in a way that a layman can make sense, and it has to be like a flow. So day one, this is what you did. Day two, this is what you did. Day three, this is what you did. Like as a story, it should make, connection throughout and demonstrate progress. And sometimes it's not everyone's forte to write as well as they actually do with the patient. So like, I have a therapist, she is excellent. Like I would trust her with my closest family member. She's that good at what she's doing. But if you read her notes, half of it will be like very routine, very mundane. So yeah, you do have to spend time, and she is one of those who does spend a lot of time on patient care, hands-on. So that's where it gets challenging. So to answer your question, yes, we do find it hard to balance the time that it takes to document. I would rather give that time to my patient than to sit and think creatively of how to impress the reviewers.
Okay. So now this is a question that my co-founders at Premises wanted me to ask you, although I think I know the answer to this question already. The question is that what is one technology change that you would ideally want, which you believe would make your life very easy?
Mm. While I'm not a big fan of cookie cutter documentation, but to have the build feature where you can personalize, customize things, but to have like a template to get you going, like to get started, I would like to have more of that feature, like, and sensible options, not just, that patient did dynamic balance. No, that could entail a lot of things. So to get a starter phrase and then to be able to customize, I think that would be the ideal situation.
Okay. So obviously, I've spoken to a lot of physical therapists, like I said, over the last few months. And this is another common refrain, another common complaint that has been coming to us, is that the very famous work-life balance. And a lot of physical therapists complain that literally that concept doesn't exist when you talk about physical therapy. We have had conversations with physical therapists at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, and we try to be kind to them, saying that we believe that this would be very early in your day or very late in the night. Do you really want to do this? And they said that I'm anyway going to be awake. I have a appointment at 1 in the night or 2 in the night, so I don't mind. I have 30 minutes window in between. I'll love to talk to you guys then. So how do you manage your work life balance?
I'm sure you've heard from everyone else. It does not really exist as much, but I try my best to not bring work home as much. It's hard a lot of times, but I do try and make it a point to absolutely not bring it home on Fridays. And I mean, obviously, I do have to log in if there's some issues and to put out some fires, but uh, knock on wood, but I'm at a sweet spot right now with my staff and my team where it's running on a decent autopilot situation. So, but yeah, work-life balance is something that everyone's striving for, and having a good documentation system will definitely help. And then also a system that might do a lot of other things for you, like make your home exercise programs for you or help you make them. A system that, is communicating with your patients and interface with the family members sometimes when they want to ask, simple questions. You don't necessarily have to give them the whole medical chart on it, but some amount of information that can be given safely to them. And I think something like that would help get better work-life balance for all of us.
We hear you. So we absolutely hear you. And we are also very fortunate. We are blessed with a tech team that doesn't really believe in work-life balance. So I'm really thankful to you that you're sharing these suggestions, which you believe that would help you improve the life of physical therapist, make it potentially much more easier. And we would be immediately working on the recommendations that we are hearing from you. So talking about challenges, what is the, so you obviously have a decade and a half experience of physical therapy. So over the last 15 years, what is one biggest challenge that you have faced? And it may not necessarily be related to technology. And how did you go about overcoming it?
There are many challenges, but I think one of the big ones was back when the reimbursement patterns changed, a lot of contracts. So how the model is for skilled nursing homes for a vast majority is that you work for a company A and you work at site for company B. So, and then the contracts don't get renewed, the contracts get lost. So you either are absorbed by the new incoming company or you have to move on to something else. So sometimes you have to change before you want to change. Sometimes you get stuck even though you want to change, with all those changes and the uncertainty that was especially looming large around 2018, 2019, when they were going to make that big change in the reimbursement pattern. So I think that was a big challenge. And those were some difficult times.
So along those lines, my last question before we dive into the rapid fire round is, over the last 15 years, what has been the professional achievement that you're the proudest of? So obviously 15 years means that you have seen a lot of ups and downs and a lot of ups that would have made you really proud. But what is one single achievement that you would love to talk about?
My achievements are when I, randomly I'm at a store and I run into a patient and they're walking. They come to us after a big surgery and are not walking, or especially like when my stroke patients, I run into them out in the community. The satisfaction that I get and the pride that I feel is unparalleled with, anything else that I would have achieved professionally or personally. So I just feel like I feel more fulfilled when I see those people out in the community, or like a lot of times they would say things that are very heartfelt when they are able to just do a very small thing, which for you and me may not be such a big deal, but for them just to be able to get up on their own or to be able to answer the door, things like that. So those kind of things I would feel are my achievement when they take the time to actually write to me or send an email over, with their appreciation. I think that is an achievement for me.
Spoken like a true doctor. So now we'll dive into the last section very, very quickly. We'll do this. It's a rapid fire section. I have 5 questions for you. My only request would be not to think too much about answering these questions. These could be one-worded answers. These could be a couple of sentences, whatever suits you best. And these questions have been compiled after a lot of brainstorming. So we have, as a team, done a lot of brainstorming to understand what would make a lot of sense in a rapid fire. So my first question to you is, if not a physical therapist, what would you have been?
A teacher.
And any particular subject?
I personally like history. So
okay. History teacher. One movie or show or book which has impacted your life the most?
Well, not impacted professionally, but I really, really liked the show Private Practice. And it's not exactly a real life depiction, but, it's
I was almost expecting you would say the Grey's Anatomy, but I think I'm still pretty close.
Private Practice is a spin-off of Grey's Anatomy.
Okay. What is your last Google search? You
PDPM.
can look at your phone, maybe.
I was just searching about PDPM interrupted stay because I have a situation at work right now that I'm trying to figure out more about. So,
Okay. So at what age would you ideally want to retire, if at all?
I so the funny thing is, before COVID happened, I always had this in mind that 40 years, that's it. I'm not working after that. But I was home for 3 months, not by choice because of COVID and how the things were. And I have a young child at home, and for whatever reasons, 3 months. And I realized that about myself, that I don't think I can retire, at least not by choice, voluntarily, for the next 10, 15 years. So,
Interesting. So the last question, and this could be a personal thing, this could be a professional thing. So if you had a magic wand, what one thing would you want to change in your life?
I would like to have easier access to travel and time off. Just, be able to take time off when I want to visit family, friends, or just take a decompress.
So clearly, work-life balance is very close to your heart. You might not be able to do it, but that is something that you keep yearning for. So thank you so much, Dr. Geeta, for taking out time so late in the evening for you. It was wonderful talking to you. I learned a lot about the life of physical therapists, about how you guys perceive technology, about the challenges that you're facing. And as a brand, as Remesis, I would like to commit on behalf of the entire company that we are really committed to making the changes. We have been talking to a lot of physical therapists. We have been hearing you guys, and we would love to implement all the changes that you guys are expecting. One parting note, the final note from your side to the physical therapists in the US, especially the ones who either want to come to the US or who want to grow up the corporate ladder. What is one thing that you would like to advise them before we close this formally?
It's the run of the mill. Believe in yourself and give it your best shot, because if you are brought to it, you will see through it. So it's not impossible.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Geeta. It has been wonderful having you on this, and we hope to continue our interactions going forward. Thank you
My
so much.
pleasure.